We talk a lot on this channel about how Brexit is really a constant fantasy. And one of the things that is almost certainly true about Boris Johnson is, well, he seems to believe it, that Brexit is somehow going to be the gloom that lifts us out of this economic peril that we're facing with COVID-19, as did many Brexiteers now and beforehand, that somehow the EU was chaining down good old Britannia, and that it wasn't allowing it to fulfill its true potential, and that now that we are unchained, we can somehow sail off, apparently, to become the new 51st state. Thanks, guys. um, but there you go. We are once again going to cover the true facts of when Brexit meets reality. Reality always wins. So today's article comes from The Guardian, and it is: the harder reality gets for Johnson, the tighter he clings to his Brexit fantasy. Words do not often fail Boris Johnson. They are tools that built his career, wielded for persuasion and deception, often at the same time. But his gift has deserted him during the pandemic. His performances in Parliament are halting and listless. It is a while since he seeded the national conversation with one of his trademark phrases: the no doomsayers and gloomsayers, the mutton-headed old mugwop, or the inverted pyramid of piffle. He and his jaunty metaphor for flattening the perk of infection, the squash the sombrero. But that was before he caught the disease. COVID-19 drained the colour from the Prime Minister's speech as well as his cheeks. He is miscast as a leader for dangerous times. The role demands responsibility and attention to detail. The Tory leader prefers a less gritty script, but government is about shoveling grit. That is an arduous journey between making promises and keeping them. Johnson outsources the discipline to others. In 2 terms as Mayor of London, taught him the value of letting aides do the unglamorous part of the job. That is why he is refusing to sack Dominic Cummings for bending the lockdown rules. Cummings is vital in Downing Street as a man who sees things through bulldozing obstacles when others might try to negotiate around them. That trait appeals to Johnson on an intellectual as well as a practical level. The two men have similar self-regard as brilliant mavericks who can ignore the rules meant for little people. But Dominic Cummings has arranged that arrogance into a pseudo-scientific doctrine, spelled out verbosely on his blog. Johnson's vision is a shapeless blob of institution, half-learned history, and code classism. The chief strategist is the stuff moulded into in which the jelly of Johnson gets the gut impulses get poured into. Once set, the doctrine can then hold its shape, albeit with a wobble. That fiction is especially important for the Eurosceptic ultras. When pressure over the lockdown breach was at its almost intense, one device they used to rally Tory MPs was to claim that Cummings must stay in number 10 to deliver the purest Brexit. The fear that Johnson will be swayed by a cause for extending the transitional terms, balancing at the economic cost of a no-deal Brexit exit in December and the lost popularity when manufacturing industries in marginal seats pay the price. Cummings is tasked with keeping a foot on the accelerator pedal as the cliff edge comes into view. He is said to keep the PM honest on Brexit. That is not honesty, in the commonly understood sense of the word that involves the verifiable truth. In the Eurosceptic usage, it means loyalty to an idea of Brexit, for the sake of which all dishonesties are permitted. Long before rows over lockdown, there were dodgy claims about Turkey joining the EU and the 350 million a week budget contributions. Apparently, the higher truth of national liberation cancels out any devious means used to achieve it. Johnson was a liar before he fronted the Vote Leave campaign, but in a lazy, blurring way, he was into small-time tactical fibbing when that often backfired, making up quotes when he started out in journalism, denying an extramarital affair when it served him in Michael Howard's shadow cabinet. He was exposed and sacked both times. Cummings honed that raw talent for deceit like a boxing coach who turns it into a back-alley street brawler into a heavyweight champ. The fighter and trainer need each other. The Brexit talks are the next title bout, and for the anti-Brussels hardcore, killing talk of extension goes beyond December. That is the prize. There is a round of negotiations this week, but no one expects any meaningful progress. The sides are miles apart, accusing each other of stubbornness. It looks like a replay of last year's nail-biter, which ended with Johnson crumping at the last minute, signing a deal on terms he had once rejected and calling it a victory. Until recently, officials and business leaders on both sides of the channel expected the same thing to happen again. They see the pandemic as an irresistible argument for postponing the gratuitous economic disruption. But confidence that reason will prevail is draining away, because it is hard to find anyone in government who sounds reasonable. The chest-beating ideology that Tory MPs spout in public turns out also to be what many ministers say in private. Freedom must be grabbed with both hands, or Brussels will bind them with red tape. The cost of no deal is lower during a pandemic because trade volumes are depressed anyway. A shiny new economy driven by industries of the future will have to be built anyway, so Britain should not waste time on relations with rusty old Europe. They do not say this apart from an elaborate bluff. They actually believe it. The Prime Minister will be more attached than ever to the script now, because it gets him out of his gloomy COVID-19 pit, back to the flights of optimism. He does not sound himself when urging caution. Hard truth are pitched below his natural vocal range, when he will hate the solemn tones of the coming recession even more. He wants to be singing hymns to the blue skies over global Britain. The darker the horizon, the more he will need to believe in that brave new dawn, and the more he will want to walk into that existence. Even the Prime Minister's allies do not describe him as a man of principle. He struggles with fidelity to people and facts, but his longest relationship is with rhetoric, and that is a mistake to dismiss it at all as bluster. The lies surround a solid kernel of belief in himself and in his role as Britain's national destiny. It may seem counterintuitive given the reputation for dishonesty, but the reality Johnson understands. It pays him to take him at his word, and that's the truth we are facing. It's very likely, I definitely suspect, this is what's going to happen. We know that ever since the referendum, the moderates of the Conservative Party have just been weeded out and begotten away to be replaced with the hardcore Brexit song sheeters. And then at the end, many of those are going to get punished. Many of those in marginal seats, or shall we say even newly won seats, they're going to get punished at the next general election. You promised this, you didn't deliver. Once again, the phrase that I have prophesied that will one day appear on the Daily Express or even the Daily Mail, whatever, will be the phrase, This isn't the Brexit we voted for. And once the populism dragon will turn on Johnson and Cummings, as we've already seen during this Bernard Castle escapade. But that's what happens when you spin that narrative. Sooner or later, you're the government. And when you're the government, and you stoke people's fires that you should be angry at the government, what else do you expect?